now come to the urgent question. Kevin Hollinrake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Secretary of State to make a statement on financial redress for postmasters and outstanding issues relating to the Post Office Horizon scandal?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As honourable members will know, convictions across the UK have now been quashed through recent legislation, and those affected are now able to apply for financial redress under the Horizon Convictions Redress Scheme. The scheme will be wholly delivered by the Department, not the Post Office. All of the forms of redress, including those pursued under the Group Litigation Order, will be delivered by the existing schemes. Mr. Speaker, since taking office, this Government has continued to work closely with both the Scottish Government and the Northern Ireland Executive to identify those who have had their convictions overturned. Letters have started to be issued to those eligible, which will confirm that their conviction has been quashed and provide further information on how to access financial redress. But I would encourage those who believe they are eligible not to wait for a letter. Please do come forward now and register for the Horizon Conviction Redress Scheme. We have put guidance on gov.uk to help people know where they stand, whether their conviction has been overturned, and if eligible, how to apply for redress through the registration and application process. Victims will be able to choose from two options. Firstly, they can either accept a fixed settlement of £600,000, or secondly, they can choose a full claim assessment if they believe their losses exceed £600,000 and wish to have their application fully examined by the Government. No matter what route they choose to take, once an applicant's eligibility is confirmed, they will be paid a preliminary payment of £200,000. We're making sure that they can access historical data from both the Post Office and HMRC to support their decision and the application. We also recognise that with the best will and support in the world, in a few cases, some information may not be retrievable. But I can assure honourable members that even in those cases, we will do all we can so that a fair offer is made to sub-postmasters who have suffered this terrible injustice. This House was united in the last Parliament in its wish to see justice for sub-postmasters, and in this Parliament we do intend to deliver on that.
Shadow Minister Kevin Hollinrake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it is disappointing that I've again had to ask an urgent question to get the Government to come to the dispatch box. It's also disappointing that neither the Secretary of State nor the Postal Affairs Minister has responded to either of those urgent questions. This is a very clearly important matter and one deserving of full scrutiny by this House. And despite earlier promises by him, only 12 days ago, to give the House a significant update, only a written statement was available. One of the final acts of the last Government was to pass legislation which, for the first time in history, overturned hundreds of convictions and set in train the process to provide redress to the victims. We made a clear commitment that these victims would be able to apply for redress before the summer recess. This commitment has not been honoured. Although claimants can now register for redress, to do so they need a reference number that is only available to those individuals written to by the Ministry of Justice, who have today confirmed that only 10 postmasters of the 700 have received such a letter. So can I ask the Minister, when will the other 690 postmasters be written to? Assuming claimants apply for the most rapid form of redress, a fixed sum award, when will the first £600,000 payment be made? The Secretary of State will acknowledge that we had conversations regarding course of appeal convictions and those refused leave to appeal, which were not quashed by the legislation. What steps is he taking to ensure these cases are given assistance to overturn their convictions? The last Government also announced that we would top up claimants in the Horizon shortfall scheme to a minimum payment of £75,000. How many of the thousands of claimants in this scheme have been written to that effect? And finally, where is the Secretary of State, or where is the member for Harrow West, who I understand has been appointed Post Office Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, we promised to update Parliament before the summer recess. We've done that by way of a written ministerial statement, and I note that the Shadow Secretary of State himself, when he was the Minister, came and answered on most occasions for the Government. We certainly didn't take that as indication that the Government was taking this matter any less seriously than they should, and that's not the case now either. And I understand the frustration that the Shadow Secretary of State has about the number of letters that have gone out, but there have been difficulties in corroborating some of that data. I understand when the Shadow Secretary of State made that promise as a minister, he did so in good faith, but it has turned out that there have been additional physical checks that have been required. We have had to access court documents, sometimes stretching back decades, which have meant that there have been delays, but the Ministry of Justice have actually put more resource into that to ensure that that carries on at pace. As is noted, the website is now up and running. Applicants can register on that now. I'm pleased to report, as of this morning, already 89 people have done so, and we hope that once verification checks have been completed, that payments can be processed within 10 working days. In respect to the Court of Appeal question, we understand that that was discussed at length during the passage of the Act. It is a matter that is deserving of further consideration, and I understand that the the Minister for Postal Services has indeed had conversations in regard to what we can do in respect to that.
Liam Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome the answer provided by my honourable friend? He will remember that when the Select Committee reported just 4 or 5 months ago, we noted that 80% of the budget for redress had not been paid out. And we suggested to the now Shadow Secretary of State a number of measures to put into the bill to speed up the process. Those amendments were rejected. So can the Minister now assure us that he does have a grip on this and we will now begin to see checks in the post much faster?
Can I just say, we do speak through the chair, not to the Minister, and as an established member of this House, I'm sure he wouldn't want to start on the wrong foot with me. Come on, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the honourable member makes a very important point. We do want payments to be processed as quickly as possible. Data is updated monthly on the government website. We can see that in terms of the group litigation order, 210 offers have now been made under the HSS scheme of 2,730 claimants. Altogether, 2,417 offers have been accepted, and 110 convictions on the OCS scheme. Initial payments have now been made to 103 of those people.
We come to the Lib Democrats. Spokesperson Sarah Olney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's been said many times across this House, but it bears repeating. This was an appalling miscarriage of justice. The shocking dishonesty of Post Office officials found its match only in the bravery of the sub-postmasters who stood up to them. The Liberal Democrats welcomed the legislation in the previous Parliament to finally deliver justice by quashing their convictions, and we likewise welcome measures to ensure that those affected get the compensation they deserve. However, what we've seen with previous compensation and redress schemes for the victims of this scandal was a pattern of delay, complication and inefficiency. Neither the Post Office nor the Department for Business and Trade have earned the necessary trust of sub-postmasters to administer these schemes. And it was with that in mind that in 2022, the Business and Trade Committee recommended that an independent intermediary body should be set up. Will the Secretary of State agree with me that it is now time to appoint that independent body to ensure that these schemes get delivered fairly, effectively and without delay?
I thank the Liberal Democrat spokesperson for their contributions. We are concerned that matters are taking too long. We have been working with lawyers who've signed up to a framework for representing claimants, and we're looking at ways that we can speed the process up. There are issues in terms of actually collating enough expert evidence to support the claims, but we are looking at ways how that can be actually accelerated. In terms of the independent process, we are looking at an independent mediation step after the initial decisions and offers are made, and ultimately an independent appeal decision will be considered as well.
Ian Lavery.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a whole number of individuals out there who, because they weren't directly employed by the Post Office, they've been convicted, they've repaid a huge amounts of money, 10, 20, 30,000 pounds, back to the Post Office, but because of the circumstances they find themselves in, hence not employed by the Post Office, but perhaps by the sub-postmaster, cannot get any redress whatsoever. These are victims of the Horizon scandal equally as much as anyone else. Can the Minister tell me what advice he can give me to the people in my constituency of Blythe and Ashton who find themselves in these circumstances?
I thank my honourable friend for the question. I think there are some specific circumstances there that I would welcome his further information on. If he can contact the department and the relevant minister, we'll look through those circumstances and see if there is anything we can do, because we really do not want anyone to be out of pocket as a result of this scandal.
Sir Gavin Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Communities across the country were impacted by the Horizon scandal, and one of those was Wheaton Aston. And not only did Wheaton Aston lose a much-loved postmaster, they actually also lost their post office as well. Would the Minister look at the specific case of Wheaton Aston, not just in terms of that postmaster getting the compensation, but also take up the issue with the post office to make sure a post office is returned to the village?
Thank the right honourable member for his question. I'll certainly relay that back to the department. We'll look in some detail on that. It is important that communities do have a post office that they can access. They are a vital part of our infrastructure in this country. They are a vital lifeline for many individuals, and we want to make sure that every community is served as much as possible.
Evelyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to take a moment to pay tribute to my predecessor for the work that Marion Fellows did in this issue throughout her time in this House. I was delighted to hear from the Minister that there's been conversations with the Scottish Government regarding this issue and looking for justice and redress for sub-postmasters. Can I ask the Minister how confident he is that there'll be no further obstacles put in the way of justice and redress in Scotland by the Scottish Government following those conversations?
I thank the my honourable friend for her question, and would join her in paying tribute to her predecessor, who was tenacious in her pursuit of this matter. We have had a number of conversations with the Scottish Government, and we don't want to see any difference between the way this scheme is administered in any part of the country, and we're confident that that will be the case.
Dame Caroline Downey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This is a national scandal, and it's almost impossible to quantify the lack of trust, the loss of trust that has resulted both with the government but also with the post office over this. I wonder if the Minister could just set out a little bit more what they intend to do to ensure that the information and the support to make these applications to the redress scheme for every single postmaster that had been affected, every single one that had a conviction quashed, is going to be taking place.
Thank the honourable member for a question. It's a very important one. Disclosure packs are being prepared for every claimant, which will contain what we believe will be all the information they need to assess whether they wish to accept the fixed sum or proceed for a more detailed assessment of the claim. It will include details of their contracts and remuneration with the post office, details of whether they were eligible for the Royal Mayor share plan, and indeed any other information that the department can obtain which is requested. We want to work at pace with individuals to make sure they have all the information they need to make an informed decision on this.
It's Osborne.
Speaker, the Minister will be aware that I've long campaigned on this issue. He might not yet be aware of a letter that I sent to his department highlighting issues with the current compensation schemes, as well as calling attention to issues with the original 555 sub-postmasters, of which my constituent Chris Head belongs. Chris was one of the thousands of Horizon scandal people impacted by the scandal, and he himself has still only been offered 17% of his verified claim. So will the Minister agree to meet with me and Chris to discuss these issues?
I thank my honourable friend for her question. I am indeed aware of the letter and indeed all the work that she has done over a number of years in support of her constituents and indeed the wider sub-postmaster community. I'm sure that the relevant minister will agree to meet her and her constituent, and I'll make sure that request is passed on to him.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a member for Ellesmere, I represent Lorraine Williams and the formidable Noel Thomas, who spent his 60th birthday in jail for a crime that he never took place. It is clear that sub-postmasters continue to be treated appallingly by the UK Government in the wake of the Horizon scandal, made to feel guilty for the cost of compensation for the public purse. Can the Secretary of State give me confidence to know that the new Government will compensate for the real human cost of the suffering caused by this awful scandal?
Thank the honourable member for a question. We do not want sub-postmasters to feel guilty for claiming what is rightfully theirs. What this place has decided is their entitlement. We've made measures to ensure that they won't have to foot any legal bills for taking advice in respect of their applications, and we want to make sure that every potential head of loss is covered and adequately compensated for. So we want to make this as easy and as swift as possible for those affected.
Hello.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to hear from the Minister that they are going to expedite this national scandal and sort out payment to those people who have been extremely badly treated by what is a state-owned entity. My question is, are you going to do anything about those people who arguably knew that the Fujitsu software called Horizon was deficient and yet still brought legal cases against sub-postmasters, many of whom went to prison? Personally, I think there must be some redress, and those people going right the way back who were responsible for bringing cases against innocent people in the knowledge that the software was deficient, they must suffer some form of penalty.
Yeah. Honourable Member makes an important point which has been raised on a number of occasions previously. We believe that the correct approach to this is for the inquiry to assess those individuals' particular culpability, and then we will take forward their recommendations, because I think it's important that we see that individuals do take some responsibility and accountability for their actions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Horizon IT scandal is without doubt one of the greatest miscarriages of justice in our history, and whilst we cannot change what has happened, we must establish what went wrong. So can the Minister assure the House that he will carefully consider the findings of the Post Office Horizon IT inquiry, and does he agree with the Shadow Secretary of State's position that there should be prosecutions for those that are deemed responsible?
Again, we are taking a very close interest, as the Honourable Member would expect, in the evidence that is coming forward in the inquiry. Much of it is shocking. It's very concerning, the amount of obfuscation and, shall we say, misinformation that's been put out by a number of individuals. We think it's right to wait to see what the Chair of the inquiry recommends in terms of future action, but we're certainly committed to looking very closely and making sure that individuals do take responsibility for their actions.
Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. One of my constituents who was affected by the Horizon scandal was about to end more than 20 years of service with the Post Office with a comfortable package when she was persuaded to take on a post office for those 2 months. She did, and got caught up in the Horizon scandal. She then had months of trauma of trying to prove her innocence, arguing with the Post Office, and was sacked, lost the package and lost a lot of expense. I spoke to the previous Minister about it, and she has applied for compensation, but she's now being told that she's not entitled because she didn't have a contract, which she says she did have. So will the Minister meet me to discuss how we can possibly protect people and ensure that they get the compensation they're entitled to, and that we don't have this continual excuse finding for not paying people who deserve compensation?
I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for raising that question. Where there are evidential difficulties, we are looking at other ways that we can make sure that those who should be eligible are entitled to the claim, and I'm happy to have further conversations with her in respect to that.
Jim Shannon.
I can thank the Minister very much for the answers to the questions that have been posed. And I make representations for the 26 postmasters from Northern Ireland who have been fighting for years, and indeed for more years as well, to clear their name. Whilst it is fantastic that movement has been made to undo the wrongs of this scandal, and for that I thank the Minister and the Government very much, what steps have been taken to ensure that compensation is issued to all postmasters across the UK in a timely manner to avoid more delays and miscarriage of justice, including those 26 from Northern Ireland? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, thank the Honourable Member for his question. We are working closely with the Northern Ireland Executive to make sure that all the information required is verified and corroborated, so that those individuals in Northern Ireland who have been caught up in this scandal receive that letter as soon as possible.
Right, that completes the urgent question. We'll let the front benches change over.